up with the neighbors, you know, but it also helps us keep weeds out. And one key component of having a healthy lawn is to have a good fertilizing strategy. The most important question to ask, and the question we get asked in our offices all the time, is how much fertilizer to put on. We really encourage people to do a soil test. A soil test will tell them exactly what their needs are, how much to put on, and what types of fertilizer to put on. After we know how much we need, the next step is to purchase a fertilizer. As we purchase a fertilizer, that fertilizer is going to have instructions on how to put the fertilizer on, how much is in the bag and how much is needed, and we really want to follow those directions pretty closely. When we're applying it, we really want to apply it evenly. We don't want to apply it twice in the same spot. We want to get a really even amount of fertilizer over the entire lawn, or we'll have some spots that are greener than others and that won't look as good. You know, there's a difference between putting fertilizer on in the spring and the fall. In the spring, we're really trying to get that lawn to green up and look good. Nitrogen is going to be what makes that lawn green and grow in a hurry. Versus in the fall, we really want that grass to start growing some roots, so we probably want some phosphorus on that grass. This is Hudson Hill with the University of Wyoming Extension. You're watching From the Ground Up. Gardeners everywhere start thinking about watering their lawns. There's a couple of goals we're after when we think about watering our lawns. First of all, we want to make sure that our lawns are getting enough water deep into the soil that the roots will chase that water. A good guideline to go by is about 1 inch a week to start in the spring. The tools are simple. We need a ruler and something to gather water in. And so over here I've been running this sprinkler for a little over an hour into this container. If I look at that, I've got just about 1 inch of water. So I know that for this particular sprinkler, at this particular pressure, it takes me about an hour to get about as much water down as I want. Of course, soil types are different. So in order to know exactly how deep my water is penetrating, I can use a long screwdriver or something else and push it into the soil. And when that screwdriver becomes hard to push, I know that's how far my water's penetrated. So I'm down about 3.5 inches there. So we've got a pretty good start on this lawn for today. What I do is have a tuna can in my yard, and I can just throw that out underneath the sprinkler. And when that's full, I know that that sprinkler can be moved. So remember, our guidelines for healthy lawns is more water, less often, making sure we get that water deep. Remember, try not to water in the wind, and usually watering in mornings and sometimes evening to conserve water is best. This is Hudson Hill, University of Wyoming Extension. You're watching From the Ground Up.
And that allows for infections to get started. It's much easier to manage diseases if you can apply the moisture early in the day so that the leaves will dry out, not giving the bacteria and fungus an opportunity to enter the leaves. The other idea is to keep the lawns dry in between waterings. We recommend deep and infrequent watering. So you want to water 6 to 8 inches deep for your lawns, and then wait until the top inch or so of soil has dried out before you add more water. And you can test that by putting a screwdriver into the lawn and seeing how deep the moisture penetrates. The screwdriver will go through your lawn easily if it's moist enough, and it'll stop when the soil...
So what we do is we water less often with more water. Once those roots have grown above ground, we really can't do a lot about them. We have a girdled root here that we're actually going to get rid of, but once they're above ground, we can't do a lot about that. And the second one is, what do you do about suckers that are growing into our lawn and out of the ground? We can mow them out, we can deal with them and just let them grow, or we can clip them out and use a hormone to restrict growth for that year. Since this is a chemical, I'll put some gloves on and some glasses on to protect me. But this is a ready-to-use chemical. What we'll do is we'll come in and we'll cut this sucker off as close to the ground as we can, and then we're going to treat it with this plant hormone. That will take care of growth for this year. We'll have to do it again next year to any suckers that start in the lawn. This is Hudson Hill, University of Wyoming Extension. You're watching From the Ground Up.
Do you know that you can make your lawn more drought tolerant by mowing it higher? The recommended mowing height for grass that we grow here in Wyoming is 3 to 4 inches. And if we mow high, the roots of the plant are able to grow deeper, which means they have a larger pool of resources to draw water and nutrients from. If we're mowing too short, those roots are shallow and they're drying out quicker, which means we need to water more often. To make sure you're mowing at the right height, mow a couple strips in the lawn, just come out with a tape measure and measure the height of the grass where you just cut it. On a push mower, if you need to adjust the mowing height, most mowers have simple adjustments on all 4 wheels. If you need to raise the mower, you just pull this lever out, move it up, go around all 4 tires, put them all on the same level. So if you want to make your lawn more drought tolerant, you need to do 2 things. You need to mow high and you need to water deep. This is Chris Hilgert with the University of Wyoming Extension, and you're watching From the Ground Up.
Soil that these mushrooms are living off of. And normally, as the summer dries out, as we manage our yards and landscapes, these mushrooms will disappear. Sometimes when there's a big piece of wood that gets buried in the soil in our yard, we may see mushrooms for several years. The second question is harder to answer. In our offices, we don't tell people whether they can eat mushrooms or not. There are several mushrooms that are poisonous that look a lot like other mushrooms, and it takes a lot of training to be able to distinguish between the two. So if you are interested in growing mushrooms for consumption, there is information about edible species of mushrooms and how to grow them at the University of Wyoming Extension site. This is Hudson Hill with the University of Wyoming Extension. At some point in time, almost all homeowners find themselves either needing to plant lawn or patch the existing lawn that they have. There's a few simple steps to take in order to ensure success. First of all, we want to be able to pick the right seed. Thinking about shade, how much traffic the lawn's going to have, how much wind the lawn's going to have, and how much water is available to the lawn. Once we pick the right seed, we want to think about seed bed. Here we're just patching a lawn, so we want to work that seed bed up a little bit so that as we plant this seed, we can try to get all of the seed covered with about 1/4 inch of soil. Remember, these seeds are really tiny and they need soil on top of them, but they don't need a lot of soil. So then we want to remember that seed is evolved by growing up in the footprint of a buffalo. It really needs a firm seed bed. We can use a roller, but we can simply walk on it. Once we get that nice and firm, we're then going to add some organic matter. Here I'll put some peat moss on top of this seed. We could also use straw, leaves left over from last year, any organic matter. That organic matter is going to help us hold moisture there for the seed to germinate, but also to grow. So now that we've got our organic matter down, we're going to water that. We're going to water it enough to get that seed germinated. And then what we're going to remember is, boy, once that grass starts to grow, it's just a tiny little hair. So once we get that watered,
to check all their fluids, their oils, their filters and things like that, fresh gas, things of that nature. Most of the engines are equipped with a dipstick that shows you the level of the fluid. A person's going to have to refer to their particular mower in terms of where they drain it and how they refill it and the quantities they do. On this mower, for example, there's an air filter underneath the housing. You just have to take that off, inspect it, make sure it's clean. Filters and fluids are cheap. Mowers get pretty expensive, so it's pretty inexpensive maintenance to do. Second, I would recommend that they check all their belts and idlers and blades, making sure the blades are sharp, the belts are in good condition. A person has to, a lot of times, get the mower tipped up in a position to gain access to the blade. Again, making sure the engine's off. You want to inspect your blade that the blade is sharp. The blade can be removed with some home tools. A lot of people can do it. Otherwise, facilities like us, we can sharpen the blades for you. And third, I'd check all the safety circuits on the machine or safety systems on the machine to ensure they're working properly so nobody gets hurt during the mowing season. There again, depending on your machine, most of them are equipped with something that if you let go of a handle, the engine stops or the blade comes to an abrupt halt so that we can't get underneath. As As we get the machine running, we should test that they're working fine, that everything shuts off. So if you're not the person operating the mower and it's a young child or whatever, we don't stand a chance of getting a finger or a toe cut off in a mowing situation.
So if it's been a while since your mower's been maintained, you should probably get it checked. This is Jeff Edwards for the University of Wyoming Extension from the ground up.
Gets more place for bugs and disease to invade the plant. So let's take a look at this mower blade. This blade really needs to either be sharpened or replaced. So on most mowers, it's just a single bolt that takes the blade off. Usually it takes a little muscle. It's been getting tightened, so you'll take it off against the way the mower runs. So if we look, we can see that it was definitely time to either sharpen or replace this blade. This blade's been sharpened multiple times. I think it's time for a new one. So when choosing a replacement blade, it's important to remember that there are several shapes and sizes to choose from. We can look at our owner's manual to tell us what size we need, or we can bring our old blade in and simply look and see which one we need. So I'll go ahead and put this new blade on, and we'll get this mower set back up, and we'll cut this lawn with a good sharp blade. We won't have that jagged edge on top of that grass. This is Hudson Hill, University of Wyoming Extension. You're watching from the ground up.
Take a lot of time and water, energy and money. There's a lot of interest in installing drought tolerant and low maintenance turf grasses in the lawns around our homes. If you're considering a drought tolerant or a low maintenance lawn, some of the grasses you might consider choosing would be fine fescues, tall fescue, or even some of the native grasses like buffalo grass or blue grama. Each of these grasses has a little bit of a different look, so it might be worth it to do a little investigating, go see some lawns and see which ones you like. Sometimes people aren't pleased with the aesthetics, the look of the drought tolerant lawn. So it is important that you choose the right grass with the look that you're going for. And if you are considering a drought tolerant lawn, just remember that any grass you plant from seed is going to need some water to get it established, but once it is up and growing and established, you can save a lot of water and time and money and still have a nice green lawn. If you'd like some more tips on how to conserve water and use drought tolerant plants in your landscape, you can always visit your local county extension office. From the University of Wyoming Extension, this is Chris Hilgert,
turf grass specialist. Today we're going to be talking about early spring lawn care in North Dakota and western Minnesota. The first thing I want to caution you about is to not get started too early, and if you do, you're going to end up by opening up the turf grass canopy to some air, some light, and the weed seeds that are there being hidden by that turf grass canopy are going to begin to germinate and get a head start on your grass. And then you'll be fighting weeds all summer long. So once the grass is starting to show some green color, you can then go ahead and do some of this work. What we have here that we're going to be demonstrating for you today are some basic lawn care pieces of equipment. Of course, over here to the right is a mower, a rotary mower that we are going to lower the height on. And what that'll do is it'll pick up the dead grass from last year and open up that canopy a little bit, but not too much, to allow for the crown of the grass plant to warm up and begin some growing. Then the next thing we're going to do to help improve the soil condition here is to take the aerator. This will pull out plugs of soil about 2 to 3 inches long and open up that soil canopy for better aeration, air movement, water movement, and help to improve overall root growth of the turf grass. Then we're going to follow up with that with a power rake. Now this is a machine that spins some impellers, sharp impellers on an axle here at a very high speed, and that spreads the soil evenly over the turf grass surface, acting as a top dressing, which benefits the grass plant itself. And then if you have any bare spots that you would need to do any seeding, overseeding on, you can go ahead and get your grass seed, a mixture of Kentucky blue, perennial rye, and fine fescue, sprinkle it on the bare spots, drag it in with the back of a broom rake, let the rain come or water it yourself, and you've got yourself a renovated lawn. What we have here now is a mower that we used last year. at the standard mowing height, which is about 2.5 to 3 inches in height. That's a good height to maintain your lawn at all summer long. And then for this particular purpose, we're going to drop the mowing height down to roughly about 1 inch. And so you can see the designation here that we have on this particular model of mower. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Way up there would be very high. That would be about a 4-inch mowing height. So we're going to drop it down to roughly B and see how it goes. That should bring us down to about 1 inch mowing height. If we drop it too low, we take the chance of having a scalping effect, which if that happens, we are going to be damaging the crown of the grass plant. It's going to slow it down as far as regrowth goes, and it gives those weed seeds that are ever present in our turf grass canopy a chance to go ahead and get a jump start on the grass. You should have changed your oil last fall before putting it away for the winter. If you didn't, you should do it now before you start doing any mowing this spring. And in most cases, the mowers today have a little bit different starting procedure than they used to have. Remember the old choke that you had to push over to get it started? Not anymore. Now they have these little bulbs that you have to push down here, and they say push them in slowly all the way 3 to 4 times. All right, and most of them have a governor on them, so you don't have to worry about any speed. And a lot of them have battery starts, but we don't have a battery start. So I am the battery here for this particular mower, and give it a pull or two. There we go. As you may have noticed, we have a bag on this mower, and it's a good idea when you do this type of mowing, scalp mowing at this time of year. It's a good idea to pick up those clippings because you don't want to be adding any more organic matter, leaf litter back onto the lawn than is necessary at this time. Through the rest of the year, you don't need to bag your clippings. Most mowers nowadays have a mulching blade, so the clippings are cut into little confetti-sized pieces, and they're blown right back into the turf canopy, and actually are returning some of the nutrients to the lawn, so it cuts down on at least 1 fertilization a year. So this is the only time that you'd ever want to go ahead and collect the clippings. Would be at this time of year, or if you should happen to be away on vacation and the kid that you hired to go ahead and cut your lawn while you were away didn't do it, and come back and your grass is almost knee-high, then you'd want to go ahead and collect them at that time. After we get done with our scalp mowing, we want to go ahead and get into sharpening our blade after that, because we've gotten it a little bit lower than we like to, and it's going to dull the blade, and you don't want to mow your lawn all summer long with a nice sharp blade, so it'll do a much better job and cut down on disease problems as well. What we have here is a spindle aerator, or drum aerator sometimes it's known as, and this one will pull plugs easily from the turf. It's an easy one for the homeowner to go ahead and manage because it's on an axle, and as we go forward, these tines will spin around and pull out plugs of soil. And that's very easily operated, something you can probably rent from a equipment rental place, and a lot easier to handle for the homeowner to handle than the reciprocating ones, which are a little bit bigger, beefier, and should probably be handled only by lawn care professionals. This is our soil here. This is thatch from here to here. That's about 1 inch of thatch, a little bit more than we would like to have on a lawn. And so the core aeration and the follow-up of power raking will help to reduce this thatch down to about 1/2 inch. It's like body fat, a little bit is good, too much is not good. We don't want to core aerate when it's too wet, or we're going to have a sloppy mess and actually destroy the structure of the soil, or too dry, because the pluggers will actually just walk across the top of the soil and not be very effective at all. Keep in mind that core aeration is a drying effect as well as an aerating effect. What will happen with these holes now is that the root systems from the adjoining plants will go ahead and grow into those open holes and make a nice, good, healthy turf. It'll help to revitalize the turf for us. So now, next what we're going to do is we're going to take and run the power rake over here and see how well they would break up. Generally speaking, when the soil is wet like this and it's a heavy clay soil, it'll be more effective if you can let this dry for a day and then come back either later in the afternoon or the next day, the next morning, with a power rake and break these up, and they'll pulverize a lot easier than if they are wet like this, especially in heavy clay. What we're going to do next is go over the cores that we pulled out here previously with this power rake. And there are several different models of power rakes on the market. This particular one happens to have a single axle where the impellers spin around at a very, very high speed and pulverize the
Springs, we often have some unusual management problems in our lawn because of the excess moisture that we get in the form of rainfall. We usually don't have to deal with those problems in Wyoming because it's so dry here and we get to manage when moisture goes onto the lawns. But with the excess moisture that falls from rainfall, it usually falls at night, and the pores on the plants are open, which allows bacteria and fungus to get into the leaves and the stems of plants. And that allows for infections to get started. It's much easier to manage diseases if you can apply the moisture early in the day so that the leaves will dry out, not giving the bacteria and fungus an opportunity to enter the leaves. The other idea is to keep the lawns dry in between waterings. We recommend deep and infrequent watering. So you want to water 6 to 8 inches deep for your lawns, and then wait until the top inch or so of soil has dried out before you add more water. And you can test that by putting a screwdriver into the lawn and seeing how deep the moisture penetrates. The screwdriver will go through your lawn easily if it's moist enough, and it'll stop when the soil surface is dry. So if you apply your water deeply and infrequently, allowing things to get a little drier, it'll be easier to manage diseases that have occurred in a wet season.